Subhanallah walhamdulillah wa la ilaha illallah. Subhanallah walhamdulillah wa la ilaha illallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Welcome back to the Quranic Reflection Show on Inspire FM. So just before the break, we were touching upon social media and YouTube and how that can be used for obtaining knowledge. Inshallah, now we'd like to move on to the part of the show where we address the dangers of little knowledge and acting upon a little knowledge as well.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Rabbi yassir wa barik wa ya arhamar rahimin. Before we go into those dangers, I just want to mention another anecdote from the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and once again illustrating something similar to what we mentioned about the Sahabi who made ghusl and actually died as a result of it, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. This hadith is in Sahih Muslim. It's also in Bukhari, but Muslim has slightly more detail. And again, it speaks about similar scenario where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam sent out a group of Sahaba on a military expedition or something similar to it. And like always, the Prophet ﷺ told the Sahaba, informed the Sahaba that they must obey their leader. He would always put somebody in charge, ﷺ, would always have an Amir in charge of them, and told them that they must obey the leader, as he would regularly do. And this is commanded in the Holy Quran as well. For example, in Surah Nisa, ayah 59, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, ati'u Allah wa ati'u al-Rasul wa ulil amri minkum. O you who believe, obey Allah and obey the Messenger and the people who are put in charge amongst you, ulil amri, those people who are given charge over you, obey them also. So, and this is not only a prophetic command and was repeated regularly, but also in the Holy Quran. We have this regularly. So this important and well-known teaching of the Prophet ﷺ was to obey the leader. And as we spoke about in the previous incident where Amr ibn al-As, he led them in prayer and they all followed him even though they disagreed with him. They were unhappy with what he's doing. So this was something well-known to the Sahaba radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. So on this particular expedition, what happened is their leader, one way or another, we're not given full details, for one reason or another, he became upset with them. So he commanded them. He said to them that collect firewood and I want you to light a fire. And then the fire was lit, and after the fire was lit, he said to them, right, you were commanded to obey me, so I command you all now to jump into the fire. Okay. Obviously, they were very reluctant to do so. First of all, to jump into a fire is not easy. And secondly, they were questioning whether, rightly, they were questioning whether this is a valid command and this is a command that they should be obeying or not. And they decided not to. They didn't jump into the fire. When it was brought back to the Prophet ﷺ, and obviously the argument being made was, well, they were supposed to obey the leader, and he commanded them to do this, but they didn't obey the leader. The Prophet ﷺ answered in the following way. He said, لا طاعة في معصية الله إنما الطاعة في المعروف. The Prophet ﷺ said, there is no obedience whilst disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meaning you can't obey a human being when you're disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إنما الطاعة في المعروف. Rather, obedience is in that which is acceptable or good. So, the Prophet, also even before that, and this is the important point, the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned to them, لو دخلتموها لم تزلوا فيها إلى يوم القيامة. Okay, the Prophet ﷺ said to them, if you had entered it, meaning this fire, if you had entered this fire, you would have stayed in the fire until the Day of Judgment. Meaning what? They would have been continuously punished for it. So the point here once again, this incident from the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ shows us that they had some knowledge, and their knowledge was certainly that you're supposed to obey the leader. And they knew this from the Quran, and they knew this from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. And they've been instructed directly that you must obey your leader. Okay. If that was the extent of their knowledge, if that's the only knowledge that they had, and they were limited to this one hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that you must obey your leader, then would they be excused for their lack of knowledge? And this, again, as we spoke about earlier, many people think you're excused if you don't have knowledge. Would they have been excused? No. Because the Prophet ﷺ said to them, if they had entered it, they would have remained therein. And their defense could not be, well, we didn't know, we're not allowed to enter it. All we knew is the Prophet ﷺ said, obey your leader. We were just following the instruction of the Prophet ﷺ. No, it was upon them, it was obligatory upon them to have a greater understanding. Okay, to have more knowledge than just this one verse of the Holy Quran and this one hadith or repeated hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. They had to have an understanding that, yes, also the Prophet ﷺ has restricted obedience to the leader, that it's only supposed to be, it's only obligatory when it's not in disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, so the point is, this little, if they didn't, alhamdulillah, they had more knowledge, they had a better understanding, but if they had been limited to that knowledge alone, and they went ahead and they jumped into this fire, they would have been punished. And this punishment, what's it resulting from? Their lack of knowledge, or having partial information, a little bit of knowledge. And this is, as we've explained, the subject matter of what we're speaking about today, that when you have a little bit of knowledge, you have partial knowledge, it can put a person in a very difficult situation. Now, so, what are, as well as what we've already spoken about, what are some of the other dangers of having just superficial knowledge, or just partial knowledge, or snippets of information with regards to the Quran and Hadith, or with regards to the Islamic teaching? One of these, unfortunately, which does happen in our time, is somewhat prevalent. I hope it's on the decrease, inshaAllah ta'ala. And we did do a session on this in and of itself.
Yeah.
We spoke about Muslims calling each other kafir. Now, the concept of takfir and how dangerous it is. We went into a lot of detail, so I'm not going to repeat those details, but this is something that can happen. You see, a person who has just, a little bit, doesn't have a full understanding, then this person might, consider Muslims kafir. And because of some of the things they may say, or some of the things that they may do, may consider them kafir, because it doesn't have a full understanding. And when we spoke about that, this issue of takfir before, we spoke about that generally speaking, the ulama, when somebody is a Muslim, they are very, very reluctant to consider this or to declare this person a disbeliever. They will make every excuse possible not to. And I quoted one of the Hanafi scholars, Ibn Abidin rahimahullah ta'ala, in his famous book Al-Hashiyah or Radd al-Muhtar, where he said, the scholar, the mufti, if a situation is brought to him and there's a contentious situation with regards to somebody's faith, whether they're actually Muslim or they've actually gone outside the fold of Islam, he said that if you have 70 strong opinions that would incline you towards making the fatwa that this person is a kafir, and one weak opinion that you could use to say that no, he's actually a believer, you should go with a weak opinion and avoid the strong ones. Why? Because of the gravity of considering or declaring a Muslim a kafir. Now, and we spoke in great detail about how the ulama were very, very careful with this. And it's also the case that certain things which are considered kufr, considered outside of the fold of Islam, if somebody does them or somebody says them or even believes them, it's not always the case that we declare such people kafir. And there is a lot of detail to this issue of declaring people kafir, and generally speaking it's something we don't do, and if it's required to do, it's done by leading ulama of the time. It's not for the ordinary person to do. But once again we have this issue. If somebody just has a little bit of information and doesn't understand the issue fully, may call people kafir, may consider people kafir, may declare them kafir. Believers in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may declare them kafir, which is a very, very dangerous thing to do. And Allah subhanahu, as well as the hadith we quoted in that speech, I quote now a verse of Quran from Surah An-Nisa, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu idha darabtum fi sabilillahi fatabayyanu wa la taqulu liman alqa ilaykum as-salam لَسْتَ مُؤْمِنًا, which translates as, O you who believe, when you travel through the earth in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then verify. And do not call somebody who gives you salam, do not say to somebody who gives you salam, لَسْتَ مُؤْمِنًا, you are not a believer. And don't question people's faith. Don't make judgments with regards to people's faith. Something very, very dangerous, very clearly prohibited, this holy verse of Quran. But unfortunately, we find this all too often with people who haven't studied, but they just get little bits of information, especially if they just take it off the internet, because you have all kinds of views and opinions on the internet, and you have some very controversial ones as well. You have many which are unacceptable, and obviously you have some good ones as well, no doubt about it. But as somebody who doesn't have a study behind them, a good, thorough study of Islam behind them, it's going to be very difficult for them to differentiate. And generally speaking, as is the case in many things, those which are more controversial, they tend to get more exposure.
Yeah, the limelight.
So, somebody who doesn't have this knowledge, or doesn't have a background in learning, starts studying Islam, say on YouTube, going to look for those with the most hits, or the most popular ones. Often they're going to be the most controversial, the most incorrect ones.
Unfortunately,
yeah. So, and often those kind of clips, they can be takfiri. They can speak about this is kufr and this is kufr and this person is kafir, or people who do this are kafir and people who do that are kafir. Can be very much like that. So that is a very real danger, unfortunately, in our communities, when people without sufficient knowledge just take superficial knowledge from these sources. Another one, and this is important, where people sometimes they will reject things which are firmly established in the religion just because it contradicts what they personally know. Somebody comes back to as we spoke about, a little knowledge can be a dangerous thing. Or is a dangerous thing because this person has a little bit of knowledge. He knows this, and he knows this, and he knows this. Okay, and that's all he knows. And something which contradicts his knowledge, right away he's going to say, no, that's not possible. It might be mentioned in the Holy Quran. Okay? Or it might be mentioned in hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Might be something which is, very firmly and clearly established, but it contradicts his very limited, or her very limited understanding of Islam. So they'll just say, no, this I reject. As I said, this may be firmly well established in the Quran or the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. So this is another danger, that people who have very superficial knowledge, and they don't appreciate how vast the Islamic sciences are, and how much knowledge is out there, and how much knowledge we really need to have to get a fuller appreciation. A person who doesn't have that may fall into this kind of thing. Now, another danger, and this is, when it becomes even more problematic, when it starts to spread, is when this is no longer limited to the individual. This now passes on to other people. So a person, studies in this way and has this little, very superficial knowledge, little bits of information, and now starts to pass it on to other people. And it doesn't have to be, as we're speaking about, from the internet. It can even be, and more people probably do this than, take bits of information from the internet. They just practice their religion and speak about their religion based on hearsay. I heard this, I heard this. You see, somebody told me this, I once heard this, and that's their understanding of deen. It completely contradicts what we started this talk on. The Prophet ﷺ made it an obligation to study the deen, meaning study it thoroughly. Not I heard this and I heard that and I'll act upon this and you act upon that. Just complete hearsay. Okay, and one of the issues that constantly come to me, which is a really big problem and causes really great issues, is how people practice divorce. Okay. A lot of people in our communities, they have this idea. And to be honest, I really don't know where they've got it from, but it's certainly spread through hearsay. They have this idea that if a man wants to divorce his wife, according to Islamic law, then he should divorce her thrice, 3 times. He should say he divorces her 3 times. And only then will the divorce occur. Or they have the understanding that that's the correct way to divorce. It's completely wrong. It's, it couldn't be really further from the truth. It's the complete opposite of the truth. The truth of the matter is, first of all, obviously, divorce should always be a last resort. And, as Muslims, we're encouraged to explore every possibility of reconciliation before divorce. But if a situation comes to that point where divorce is inevitable and divorce has to occur, then the teaching in our Quran and our Hadith is one should give one divorce, not three. There's never a situation where a person should be giving 3 divorces in one go. Okay? I have a number of hadith where the Prophet ﷺ spoke against giving 3 divorces in one go. And what the ulama wrote with regards to 3 divorces in one go, first of all, they said, at least in the Hanafi school, to be more specific, they said to give more than 1 divorce in one go, in one sitting, is prohibited. They call it in Hanafi school talaq bid'i. It's considered an innovation to give more than 1 divorce at one time. So first of all, right away, it's a sin to give more than 1 divorce. That's the first problem. Then you have an even bigger problem. If a person gives 3 divorces in one go, then this is what we call in Arabic baynuna kubra. Talaq baynuna kubra, which may translate as a final divorce. When a person has divorced his wife 3 times, they can't reconcile now. They must go their separate ways. Okay. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah Baqarah, ayah 229, الطلاق مرتان فإمساك بمعروف أو تصريح بإحسان ولا يحل لكم أن تأخذوا مما آتيتموهن شيئا. Okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, divorce is twice, after which you may continue in good or you may go your separate ways. Okay. And there's explicit hadith for explaining these ayat as well, but how did the scholars understand these ayat? They said that you can divorce once and you can divorce twice, and even after that, فَإِمْسَاكٌ بِمَعْرُوفٍ, you can still reconcile and continue with your marriage. But once it gets to 3, once there are 3 divorces, then it's not possible. And as I said, this is clarified in many hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Okay? Then it's not possible to reconcile. Then they have to go their separate ways. So this is another issue with this. It's practiced all of the time, unfortunately, that people divorce 3 times. And this is something I would encourage imams and people who are involved in Jummah khutbah and such things to speak about, to clarify for people the legal ruling with regards to this, because it causes huge problems. So the point is, what they'll do, they have in their mind that if you're going to divorce Islamically, you have to give 3 divorces. As I said, first of all, it's a sin. Secondly, it's a final divorce. That's it. If they change their mind afterwards that actually, no, we don't want to be divorced, we want to be married, you can't. Okay? This is why the Prophet ﷺ, those Sahaba who came to him and asked about divorce, the Prophet ﷺ instructed them to give 1 single divorce. That's it. That's what the Prophet ﷺ told them. 1 single divorce. Why? Because then, if they want to reconcile, they can do so. After 3 divorces, it's not possible. But these are amongst the dangers of not studying the deen thoroughly. Just going by hearsay, hearing something here and there, and then, just considering that sufficient to act upon, inshallah ta'ala. Another danger is one may commit sins or fall into sin once again because of limited knowledge. Now, what often happens, alhamdulillah, in and of itself, it's no bad thing. It's not the fault of the person who produces the YouTube video. But for example, you have YouTube videos that will speak about a specific aspect of the behavior of the Prophet ﷺ. Or a sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. There are many videos like this. They'll speak about a specific sunnah. So, some of these videos, they speak about how the Prophet ﷺ used to joke. He used to joke with the Sahaba, not all of the time, and I wouldn't even say regularly. But we have some narrations that he ﷺ was light-hearted at times with the Sahaba, radiyallahu ta'ala anhum. So again, what do we find here? People say, yeah, the Prophet ﷺ used to joke. Okay, so they start, they feel that this part of the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, but they won't understand its limitations. Okay? In a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that, yes, I joke, but I never say anything but the truth. Many people, in their jokes, they will lie. and not recognize that, yes, the Prophet ﷺ used to joke, but he himself said he never lies in those jokes. Okay? But they will lie, and they'll think it's fine and it's okay, once again, because they don't have sufficient knowledge. They haven't understood the issue correctly or fully or thoroughly.
Right.
Other times what they'll do in their joking, they'll insult one another. You see, it's fine if it's done in banter, or both parties are happy with it, as long as it's not obscene in any way or vile in any way. But if both parties are happy and joking with each other, no problem, inshallah ta'ala. But it can go beyond the limits, where it may end up hurting a person, may end up upsetting a person, may end up even bullying a person. You see, and under the guise of joking, it's prohibited. You see, the Prophet ﷺ prohibited any type of oppression. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah Hujurat, ayah number 11, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَا يَسْخَرْ قَوْمٌ مِّن قَوْمٍ عَسَىٰ أَن يَكُونُوا خَيْرًا مِّنْهُمْ. O you who believe, no people should ridicule another people. To ridicule and to offend and to abuse and to insult people is considered prohibited. And to say, well, it's joking, the Prophet ﷺ used to joke, I was only joking, it's not acceptable. Okay? To just have that little bit of information and not know the limitations, or not study the limitations of it, and this is hugely problematic. One of the last things I wanted to mention with regards to the dangers of limited knowledge, or taking knowledge not in a holistic manner, is often people who do so, they fail to recognize difference of opinion. Difference of opinion is something very important in Islam. From the time of the Sahaba on, we've always had differences of opinion. Okay? And anybody with even basic studies in Islam knows this. Okay? And it's not through accident. It is very clearly intended by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or sorry, not intended, but decreed or willed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His religion. And it's intended very clearly by the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Okay, we have many, many evidences for this. One of these evidences I will quote, inshaAllah ta'ala, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger purposely left certain things, not all things, but purposely left certain things open and ambiguous.
Right.
Why? To allow for different interpretations and to allow for difference of opinion. And this is why the ulama said, this is not a hadith, many people quote it as a hadith, but the ulama said that difference of opinion is a mercy. Okay? It's clearly intended. So let's look at one of these hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, أَيُّهَا النَّاسِ قَدْ فَرَضَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْكُمُ الْحَجِّ فَحُجُّوا. The Prophet ﷺ said, O people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made Hajj obligatory upon you, so perform Hajj. Okay. When the Prophet ﷺ said this, a man stood up, أَكُلُّ عَامٍ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. He said, every year, O Messenger of Allah, meaning do we have to do Hajj every year? The Prophet ﷺ, he remained silent. The man kept asking. The Prophet ﷺ didn't answer. The man kept asking. Why did the Prophet ﷺ not answer? Because as we know, the Prophet ﷺ doesn't answer from his own self. The Prophet ﷺ speaks through revelation. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals to him, he's going to answer. So he remained silent, and the man repeated it 3 times. Okay. Then the Prophet ﷺ eventually answered, and he said, لَوْ قُلْتُ نَعَمْ لَوَجَبَتْ لَمَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ وَلَمَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ. If I said yes, it would have become wajib, meaning obligatory. You would have had to do it every year, and you would not be able to do so. Like imagine now, if every single Muslim all over the world had to do Hajj every single year. It's, cause huge difficulties. The Prophet ﷺ said, if I'd said yes, it would become obligatory, and you wouldn't be able to do so. Then, this is my point. Then the Prophet ﷺ said, ذَرُونِي مَا تَرَكْتُكُمْ. Okay, let me be as long as I let you be. This hadith in Sahih Muslim. Now, فَإِنَّمَا هَلَكَ مَنْ كَانَ قَبْلَكُمْ بِكَثْرَةِ سُؤَالِهِمْ وَاخْتِلَافِهِمْ عَلَى أَنْبِيَائِهِمْ. Okay, and then the Prophet ﷺ went further and said that those who were destroyed before you, they were destroyed for continuously questioning their prophets and differing with their prophets.
Right.
فَإِذَا أَمَرْتُكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ فَأْتُوا مِنْهُ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ. And if I command you to do something, then do it as much as you can. وَإِذَا نَهَيْتُكُمْ عَنْ شَيْءٍ فَدَعُوهُ. Now, and if I prohibit you from something, then leave it. Leave it altogether. The point is what? This is just one example. You have many, many examples in the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ where the Prophet ﷺ left things open on purpose in order for there to be different interpretations. Why? In order for to make the religion easier, that you have more than one opinion, you have more than one option with regards to many things. And as I said, this started with the Sahaba. Of so many differences of opinion amongst the Sahaba. And one opinion, one Sahabi holds this opinion, other Sahabi holds another opinion, even with things as fundamental as Salah. They differ with regards to various aspects of Salah. That's why nowadays we see Muslims, they have slight variances in the way they pray. Okay, the basics is the same, but they have slight variances. Why? Where did that come from? Because the Sahaba differed. Radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And a person who has very superficial knowledge, often this person tends to see things as, this is right and everything else is wrong. What they know, the little bit of knowledge that they have, it's right and everybody else is wrong. That's why the scholars said that generally speaking, the more knowledgeable a scholar is, the less often he will rebuke people. Right. Because he'll know that, right, fine, this might be different to the way I do it, but it's still acceptable. That obviously, and we'll end with this, that obviously doesn't mean that everything anybody ever does is going to be fine. We'll just say it's a difference of opinion. Yeah. No, it has to be a valid difference of opinion.
Sure. Shukran for ending on that, Sidi. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.